It's March 14th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the ongoing mass walkout by doctors. The South Korean government is adamant that a medical school quota hike must happen. Medical school professors will announce on Friday whether they will submit mass resignations. The European Parliament has given a green light to the world's first comprehensive framework for constraining the risks of AI. The law, which comes into effect at the end of 2024, will apply to any companies doing business in the EU. The U.S. House of Representatives has passed a bill that could eventually ban the social media platform TikTok in the country. The bill now heads to the Senate, while President Joe Biden is more than willing to sign the bill into law. The government continues to call on medical school professors to remain at their posts. But the professors nationwide are still considering leaving their jobs and will make that a final decision by Friday night. Our Shin Yoon starts us off.
The massive walkout by junior doctors could soon expand to collective resignations by professors of medicine. An emergency response committee of professors from 19 medical schools across the country decided in a late-night online meeting on Tuesday to determine by Friday whether to submit collective resignation letters. Those schools include those affiliated with the so-called Big Five hospitals in Seoul, Seoul National, Yonsei Severance, and Seoul St. Mary's Catholic University hospitals, and the Samsung and Seoul Asan medical centers. In the statement released after the meeting, the professors said they would protect the trainee doctors from legal action by the government. They also said they would stop the government's plan to expand the medical school quota. In response, Second Health Vice Minister Bang Min-soo urged the professors on Wednesday to stay in their positions, saying this was a matter of trust between patients and doctors.
If professors resign and leave patients behind, not only doctors, but also medical students will lose any sympathy from the people.
On the same day, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo reaffirmed the government's firm stance on boosting the medical school quota, saying the decision was made based on scientific analysis.
The decision made by the government was based on scientific grounds. We have decided to increase enrollment by 2,000 starting from 2025, taking into account the time required for medical training.
The government, meanwhile, will provide nearly 95 billion won, or over $72 million, to public hospitals this year to address the prolonged disruption of medical services. This comes as local hospitals have been experiencing a medical vacuum, such as appointment cancellations and delays in surgeries and emergency medical treatment since the massive walkout by trainee doctors. Meanwhile, Kim Tae-gu, the chairman of the Emergency Response Committee of the Korean Medical Association, underwent 14 hours of police questioning from Tuesday afternoon. Kim is one of the 5 individuals the health ministry accused on February 27th of obstructing junior doctors' training through inciting of their mass walkout. After questioning, he said the government's strong stance was regrettable and the walkout by the trainee doctors was entirely voluntary. The current situation, sparked by the government's plan to increase medical school enrollment by 2,000, has been ongoing for 4 weeks. Shin Yoon, Arirang News.
The EU has set a global precedent by being the first to officially pass a law regulating artificial intelligence. Under this new rule, AI technologies deemed high risk, especially those used in healthcare and education, must be under human control. Shin Se-byuk reports.
The European Union has taken a groundbreaking step by officially passing the Artificial Intelligence Act, setting a new global benchmark in AI regulation. The European Parliament on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of the act, with 523 votes for, 46 against, and 49 abstentions. The pioneering act aims to ensure transparency and minimize the risks of AI use. The EU began drafting AI regulations in 2018, and the first draft was released in 2021. Since then, the EU has faced hurdles, including concerns over potential competitive disadvantages facing European companies. Nevertheless, a consensus was reached in December last year, recognizing the critical need to curb the risks of AI abuse by tech firms. With the approval, the Parliament said that the law has created a global standard in AI governance.
The first regulation in the world that is putting a clear path towards a safe and human-centric development of AI.
Set to go into effect by the end of the year, the law categorizes the application of AI into 4 risk levels: minimal, limited, high, and unacceptable. The use of AI in areas deemed to pose minimal risks, such as search engines, will not be subject to regulation. On the other hand, where there are limited risks, such as with chatbots, specific transparency obligations will need to be met. Technology related to healthcare and education, such as robot-assisted surgery, falls into the high-risk category. In these cases, government approval must be secured before development and human oversight must be ensured during use. Unacceptable use of AI due to extreme risk, including public-facing biometric systems and predictive policing, will be banned. However, there will be exceptions for law enforcement in cases such as searching for a missing person or preventing a terrorist attack subject to prior to court approval. Violators face steep penalties, including fines of up to almost $40 billion or up to 7% of their global annual turnover. 신세벽, Arirang News.
And the U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of a bill that could lead to a complete ban of TikTok in the country. It remains to be seen whether that will actually happen, though, as a Senate vote is still required. Lee Seung-jae has more.
With overwhelming support, the U.S. House of Representatives on Wednesday voted 352 to 65 in favor of passing a bill that would ultimately ban the use of a popular video sharing platform, TikTok. American lawmakers have been calling for a ban on the platform, arguing that it poses a national security threat due to the fact that it's run by Chinese-based parent company ByteDance, and the Chinese government could use information gathered through the platform to its advantage. Wisconsin Republican Representative Mike Gallagher, who is one of the co-sponsors of the bill, stressed before the vote that the bill forces TikTok to break up the Chinese Communist Party.
TikTok is a threat to our national security because it is owned by ByteDance, which does the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party. We know this because ByteDance leadership says so and because Chinese law requires it. This bill therefore forces TikTok to break up with the Chinese Communist Party.
If the bill is passed by the Senate and goes into effect, ByteDance must sell TikTok's U.S. business rights within 6 months. If the sale fails, Google Play, Apple App Store, and other app platforms will be banned from providing TikTok for download. The bipartisan vote by the House comes despite former President Donald Trump's opposition to banning the popular app. Trump had argued that banning TikTok would lead to the growth of Facebook, which he criticized as an enemy of the people. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said in a briefing on board Air Force One on Wednesday that the top office is pleased to see progress on the bill. She added that the legislation is important as the U.S. continues to address threats posed by foreign technology services that put U.S. national security and the personal information of Americans at risk. The press secretary further emphasized that the White House wants to make sure the bill is on the strongest legal footing possible. However, it remains to be seen whether the bill can be passed with as much support in the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has been non-committal about bringing it to the floor for a vote, while other lawmakers vow to oppose the passage of the bill. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Fruits have been exorbitantly priced here in South Korea. Considering one apple costs less than $2 in Japan and not even $1 in the U.S., $3 to $4 apples are not at all cheap for people here. We're joined by Professor Shin Myung-gyu for more. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. South Korea seeing a historic surge in fruit prices just last month with an inflation rate of 40.6%. Professor Shim, what's the reason behind this?
I think there are two main factors behind the surge of fruit prices. First, production shortage and negative consumption spillover. First, the production of apples, which takes about 20% of all fruit consumption in Korea, has decreased over time due to aging and global warming. The aging lowers the number of farmers, so that cultivation area of apple has shrunk. And the global warming has lowered the cultivation area, as well as more frequent heavy rain during summer has also contributed to lower production. And second reason is the spillover effect from the surge of apple prices on other fruits. Because apple has become more and more expensive, consumers have tried to substitute apple with other fruits like tangerine. And this further raises prices of other fruits, which contributed to overall increase in fruit prices.
Right. One solution that I can think of on top of my head is importing those fruits, including apple. But why is that option not considered as so much of a viable solution?
As I pointed out earlier, domestic production is one of the main problems behind the scene. And one possible way to support demand is to increase import, as you suggested. And it seems that the government considers such an option by lowering the import tariff on several fruits, including banana and mango. I think this is a clearly good option, but this cannot be a permanent solution because it will impact the income of the farmers, as well as it can also introduce new plant diseases to Korea. And it is natural that income of farmers will decline with the lower fruit prices if more fruits are distributed to the market. And given that most of the farmers are not young, such a decline in income can be critical for sustaining their lives, and that might further prevent inflow of young farmers because they expect their lifetime income from farming to become lower, which can have long-run negative impact on food supply.
So could be a blow to those farmers who are not as young potentially, and also potential risks on the way, like new diseases and the pests. Now, food inflation doesn't apply just here in South Korea, but also for the rest of the world. How are other countries coping with such high-priced food prices?
Yes, for instance, the US experienced similar issues last year, and the underlying reasons are similar: supply shortage and climate change. The recent surge in overall price level has led to the higher labor costs, and geographical risk in several regions, including Ukraine, has increased the price of meal and the others. And one way to stabilize the food price is to stabilize the supply chain for food. Since the outbreak of COVID-19 and the Ukraine-Russian war, the supply chain for food has been disrupted a lot. And given that foods are not that perishable, it was inevitable to experience hike in food prices. So constructing a concrete supply chain of food was necessary. And this also involves a different kind of policy by diversifying the sources of import for food so that the negative effect of climate change on a particular region can be mitigated.
Right, and what's even more concerning is that such high prices will remain, it looks like will remain in place up until Chuseok or Korean Thanksgiving in September. Should we be concerned?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true. And I also think that it will take some time for the food prices, especially fruit prices, to be stabilized. The main reason is that food is not immediately produced as you want to be supplied to the market, and it is not storable for a long time. For example, it takes several months for apples to be produced unless it is imported right now. But as I pointed out earlier, it's not that easy to import lots of foods immediately, implying that food prices cannot be fully stabilized until new products are supplied early fall.
Professor Shim, before I let you go, any tips for wise food shopping for those fruit lovers out there, including myself?
Well, I can think of two options. One simple answer would be to spend more time to search for food prices more regularly. Either online or offline markets provide discounts for food from time to time, especially on the items whose conditions are not that good. And a regular price check can help consumers to save their money. I also suggest using services to deliver foods, especially fruits and vegetables, directly from the local producers. Since it does not involve immediate reach, it would help consumers to spend less on food, I hope.
All right, Professor Shim, thank you so much for those tips and for your insight this morning. We appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
Moscow says it's communicating closely with Seoul over a South Korean national imprisoned in Moscow on espionage charges following his arrest in January. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said Wednesday that Moscow is considering allowing the South Korean national surnamed Beg to receive consular counsel. She further declined to comment on the charges, calling it a confidential matter. Her comments come hours after Seoul's ambassador to Russia, Lee Do-hoon, met with Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko and requested that Moscow cooperate to ensure the South Korean nationals' rights and safety. A space industry cluster will be launched here in South Korea, which is expected to lead the country's mission of landing on the moon in a decade and on Mars after 20 years. It's a so-called space tech triangle. Our Oh Soo-young has the details.
President Yoon Suk-yeol promises to invest over $1 billion in space technology over the next 3 years as part of South Korea's efforts to become a leading space power by 2045. This came on Wednesday as the president attended the launch of a space cluster in Sacheon City, Gyeongsang-do province, which will form the so-called space triangle with Jeollanam-do province and Daejeon City.
2032년 우리 탐사선을 달에 착륙시키고 2045년 화성에 태극기를 꽂는 미래로의 큰 걸음을 내딛게 됩니다. 오늘 출범하는 우주산업 클러스터가 앞으로 그 길을 선도하게 될 것입니다.
According to Korea Aerospace Research Institute, the cluster will connect research centers, firms, and educational institutions to achieve cutting-edge innovations. Gyeongsang-do will focus on satellites, Jeollanam-do launch vehicles, while research and training experts will be done in Daejeon, the country's hub for science and technology. Laying out the vision of turning South Korea into one of the world's top 5 space powers and creating a vibrant space industry, Yoon said he would expand the budget for space development to $1.1 billion by 2027, double the amount of private funding, and create over 250,000 quality jobs. The government's 2045 plan aims to build a space industry worth $76 billion of private investments, attract and foster 1,000 space firms in the country, and nurture 30,000 space professionals. It will focus on establishing infrastructure, strengthening a space tech ecosystem, and expanding the new space cluster's networking capacity. To coordinate these efforts, the government will launch a South Korean equivalent of NASA in Sacheon City in May, which will lead aeronautics and space research, commercial projects, and plans for Moon and Mars explorations. The Korea Aerospace Administration, or KASA, is expected to work with other global space agencies like NASA, with discussions already underway between Seoul and Washington to apply South Korea's mobility, secondary battery, 5G, self-driving, and nuclear technologies in joint space exploration projects. Korea is already taking part in the US-led Artemis project, which will send a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket to the moon later this year, equipped with a Korean-made lunar monitoring payload. Seoul has also agreed to expand space cooperation with the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, Japan and France. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Good morning. I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Gaza, where an Israeli airstrike on a UNRWA food distribution center in Rafah on Wednesday killed 5 and left over 20 injured. On Wednesday evening, the Israel Defense Forces released a statement saying its aircraft precisely targeted and eliminated a terrorist in Hamas's operations unit in the area of Rafah, Mohammed Abu Hasna. The IDF statement failed to mention the UNRWA facility. A man with Hasna's name was on the Gaza Health Authority's list of the 5 deaths. UNRWA said that a member of their staff was also among those killed. It stated that since the war began, at least 165 of its employees in Gaza have been killed, with more than 150 facilities hit by airstrikes. UNRWA Chief Felipe Lazzarini said that attacks on their centers and facilities had become commonplace in blatant disregard to international humanitarian law. Moving over to China, where a deadly blast at a restaurant in the country's northern Hebei province on Wednesday killed at least 2 people and injured 26 others. According to reports, a gas leak is suspected to have caused the explosion. Chinese state broadcaster CCTV said the explosion occurred at around 8 a.m. local time in a fried chicken shop in the town of Yanjiao, some 80 kilometers from Beijing. The explosion damaged nearby buildings, shattering windows and scattering debris. Local authorities said the fire had been brought under control, adding that additional casualties may be found once the rubble is cleared. In Japan on Wednesday, local time, a space rocket exploded shortly after launch. Japan's Space One Kairos rocket exploded only seconds after lifting off near the launch pad on the Kii Peninsula in western Japan. Space One had been attempting to be the first private Japanese company to launch a satellite into orbit. The company's president, Masakazu Toyoda, said that 18-meter, 4-stage solid-fuel rocket was terminated after control judged the achievement of its mission would be difficult, while no comment was made on what triggered the self-destruction. The rocket carried a payload of an experimental government satellite, which could be used as a temporary backup when operational intelligence satellites fall offline. In Thailand's ancient city of Ayutthaya, around 70 elephants were treated to a special fruit feast on Wednesday to celebrate National Elephant Day. Buddhist monks performed traditional ceremonies and rituals at the event. Thailand's National Elephant Day began in 1998 by wildlife conservationists to emphasize the importance of the connection to the animal and encourage anti-poaching efforts. According to the Thai Wildlife and Plant Conservation Department, there are about 3,800 domesticated elephants in sanctuaries across Thailand.
Good morning. We had pleasant early spring weather yesterday. It was quite windy, but fine overall. It looks to be warmer this afternoon, and the warming trend will hit its peak on Saturday, topping out at 17 degrees Celsius here in the capital. But those of us in central regions in Gyeongsang-do need to pay the price for the early warmth. The ultrafine dust level will be high all day today, but the rest of the country should have decent air quality, so take advantage of the nice weather today if you can. It will get worse tomorrow in more places. Checking on today's highs now, most parts will see highs going up 1 to 4 degrees. Higher this afternoon, feeling more like early April. Seoul gets up to 15 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju topping out at 18 degrees. Sunny skies are expected for most parts, while it's getting dry in East Coast regions. Looking ahead, rain is in the forecast on Jeju from Saturday, and it will rain in most of the southern regions on Sunday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for our Friday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.